Okay, we're recording.
Excellent. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the April 13, 2021 meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission for the town of Fairfield. The first item on our agenda is bills and communications, the meeting minutes from March 23rd, 2021. I have a motion. Yes, motion to approve by Commissioner Corcoran.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Francis. Thank you. Anyone have, Commissioner Corcoran, you have something?
No, I didn't see any problems with it.
Excellent.
One question. Did we approve the restaurant not through October 31st, but through December 31st?
So
Outdoor dining?
we recertified, and yeah, and I thought that was, and yeah, and protocol, COVID protocol through 2021. So we extended that through 2021.
Right. I asked because usually we do October 31st, but this time we did December 31st. All right. Very good.
Right. Well, under the we did, and if I'm remembering correctly, we did so for the COVID protocol. I mean, because of the pandemic.
Yep.
Anyone else have any comments on that? Okay. All right. Motions to approve. I hear some feedback. Somebody trying to say something? No. Okay. Very good. Motion is to approve the minutes without any notes or corrections. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are adopted unanimously. Thank you. Next is 1152 Kings Highway Cutoff. Request of Fairfield Commons LLC for 100% release of a $201,345 bond pertaining to special permit improvements in the Design Commercial District.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went for the record. This site is on the northerly side of Kings Highway Cutoff, adjacent to the Super Stop and Shop parcel, just above the Post Road traffic circle. A 36,000 square foot retail building was approved originally by this commission in April of 2006, which approval was later modified and approved by the commission as a medical office building with the same site plan in March of 2017. That building is recently completed and now occupied. We do have a report from the engineering department confirming that the bond and improvements are completed, and we therefore recommend its 100% release.
Okay, very good. Saw the email in the file there. Anyone else? I have a motion to approve release by Commissioner Noonan. Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thank you. Commissioner Noonan?
No further comments.
Very good. Commissioner Corcoran? Very good. I don't have anything further to add either. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this? Motion is to approve release of the bond in its entirety. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Good. Kathy? Very good. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Bond is released unanimously. The next item is 528 Black Rock Turnpike, a review of revised plans for an approved 23-unit residential building.
Okay, again, Jim Went for the record. This site is on the corner of Black Rock Turnpike and Castle Avenue, just north of the exit 24 Black Rock Turnpike traffic circle. On September 29th of this past year, the commission approved a zoning compliance application for a 23-unit residential building, an 8-30G application. The applicant is seeking to modify the plan by eliminating the pitched gable roof that was originally proposed in favor of a flat roof. That proposed change will reduce the overall mass and height of the building while allowing the provision of a rooftop amenity space for the prospective tenants. The original, we did append 2 links to the agenda. One was the original architectural renderings, and the second was the proposed revision. So those were attached to your agenda. We can call them up if you need to see them. It's important to note that there are no changes to the approved site plan. The site plan remains exactly how it was proposed and approved. So the question before the commission is a determination of whether or not this proposed revision is in keeping with the original approval, or whether a new application is required to implement the proposed rooftop or roof line change. It's the staff's opinion that since there's no change to the site plan that was approved and the roof line reduces the overall height and bulk of the building, that we don't believe a new application is warranted, but that is your call. I did not want to make a unilateral decision there, bring it back to this commission, having approved the plan, to see whether you think this modification is consistent with the original approval or whether a new application is warranted.
Thanks. And so really, I think then the motion or procedurally, we either need to what are we doing? We're moving to
Well, you would
accept the
make
revised plan, or
yeah. The motion would be either that you find that the proposed revision is consistent with the previously approved plan and therefore no new application is required, or a motion that the commission feels that the proposed revision is such a departure from the previous plan that a new application is warranted.
consistent, right? Okay, so the crux is whether it is consistent or not.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Noonan.
Yeah, I would move that we find that it's consistent with the previous plan, essentially the first part of what Mr. Wentz said, so that no new application is needed.
Okay, thank you. Any second? Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Okay. Commissioner Noonan, you want to start?
Yes, please. Yeah, I concur with the staff's opinion that this is not needed for a new application, a new public hearing. It doesn't change the footprint. I don't think it would change, at least mine, though I think maybe even this commission's determination of when we approved the application to begin with. If anything, it reduces the size, which is generally a good thing, adds more amenities to the residents, another good positive. Based on what I've heard, I don't believe a new application is needed or warranted.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Corcoran?
I guess my question is, if we got a new application, would we have any reason to deny it? And I don't think we would. But I'll have to say that I think that the original plan fits in better with the neighborhood, even though the building is going to be lower. When you eliminate the gabled roofs, all the houses around there have gabled roofs. The new building looks like an office building. And secondly, one of the changes was the siding, and the renderings we have don't show what the new siding would look like. The original was shingles, and this is going to be vertical. But again, I don't see any point in having a new application.
Sorry, thanks. We're getting some background noise and feedback. Commissioner Corcoran, you want to continue?
No, that's about it. I'm just saying I like the original building better. Even though there may be less massing, I think this building the original building appears smaller. And we can't see what the siding is, but again, I don't see how a new application would give us any reason to change our decision.
Understood. Commissioner Francis?
I would ask what the amenities are on the roof.
Yeah, there's a, Mr. Wendt, you want to just review that? There's
Maybe, Emmeline, if you can, from the agenda, can you pull up the second link from that item on the agenda? There is a sitting area shown up there with some furniture and an outdoor fireplace, gathering space on the rooftop for the prospective tenants.
Yeah, it's actually the last page. It's the last page of the staff notes, which is the best. Yeah. And actually,
Nope, that's the wrong
No.
link.
Page 5 of the staff notes provides a letter from Phil Cerrone and provides a summary of the changes and also provides a layout of the proposed areas.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a smaller version of that sketch attached to your, so the rooftop is going to have some screening around the mechanical equipment. And there is basically a social gathering space up on the rooftop for prospective tenants with a sitting area around an outdoor fireplace.
Yeah, top of the 4th page of the second link. If you want to call that up online.
Yep. Well, it's very nice for the tenants. I'm not sure it's so nice for the neighbors. I think I prefer the original plan better. It looks more residential, and it wouldn't impact the neighbors who, if I recall, this is already not in conformity with our setbacks, is it?
No, it's not. And under 8-30G, this site, the
it's-
footprint of this building is probably 80+% of the area of the lot. So no, it does not comply with the setback standard.
Yeah, there's already a tremendous impact on the neighbors.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, I think that Commissioner Corcoran framed it pretty well. Whether there would be anything in this that would counsel us to make a different decision on the original application, or ask them to do anything differently in the nature of health, safety, and welfare. To the extent that we would like to ask for the architecture to be more in keeping with the residential style of the immediately surrounding neighbors, we can do that. I'm sorry, if you're not speaking, could you just please mute your line?
Yes.
Thanks. And I would note that across the street from this is an office building, right? I mean, this is relatively immediately adjacent to the circle, and it's kind of a a transition area. Like, it's a transition between that residential, right across the street and off the block, and then next door with the office building and the traffic circle. So I don't know that it's completely out of character, but the architecture certainly is more, to your point, Mr. Corcoran, more industrial, more corporate, than residential. And I would support making a recommendation that there be some additional treatment that would promote a more residential feel, like window treatments, right? Shutters or something like that. Why can't we have siding? Why do we have to remove the shingles, rather? Why do we have to remove shingles and instead have horizontal panels, which really creates a much more sort of commercial industrial look. So to the extent that I guess, Mr. Wayne, you think we can make a recommendation that while the commission doesn't view the revision to be inconsistent with the site plans that were approved by the commission, we would recommend that there be some modifications to the architecture and styling, so that it would be a bit more residential to sort of blend in with the homes and the surroundings.
Yes, I think that's certainly appropriate. It's the question of, do you want to make that a recommendation based on this motion, or based on this feedback, ask them to make revisions, to make those revisions and come back with a new plan before you take a vote. But either way, I think we can I hear what you're saying, and it can be addressed, and I think it would be an appropriate recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, look, another way to do this would be to, I guess, to table it and asking them with a request that they revise the plan in accordance with that recommendation. Would it be a table?
Yeah, that's certainly another appropriate option.
Okay, I mean, so I'll throw it open to the commission. I mean, how does everyone feel about that? My personal view is I would support that and encourage others to support that, because it really does have a very strikingly, to me, different look and feel to the building. It's already, out of compliance with our regulations in terms of, size, massing, setbacks, and all the rest of it. It's already an imposing structure out of the ordinary, out of compliance with the regulations. And so, I mean, I think that would be a good thing. How do others feel about it? Commissioner Brayman?
I agree, Mr. Chair. I would move to table with the recommendation to the applicant that they address the architectural features concerns that we've raised in this discussion. I think that, the commission likes to see everything that it's being asked to approve when it approves applications under 8-30G. I remember this application well. This is something that we decided, recently. And while there may not have been a difference one way or the other, I mean, if we had a whole new public hearing, I agree with Commissioner Corcoran that perhaps we would have reached the same result, or we would reach the same result. But I do think it's appropriate to ask the applicant to address some of the concerns, which I think can be addressed in the design, and that we table it in the interim.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Braun? Yep, Commissioner Braun.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Jim, can you, and I'm sorry, I can't get my computer to turn off. Can you hear me? I'm hearing feedback, but Jim, can you just summarize again all the differences between the first one and this one? Because I'm looking at the plans from the first one. I don't see the difference. Is there a height, no height difference, no footprint, just the roof amenities?
The footprint is identical.
Okay.
So that there are no changes to the site plan. The changes are the original plan had a gable roof that had a ridge and a pitched roof above the roof deck. What they're looking to do is take that ridge away and just go down to the roof deck and provide some amenity space. Lowers the overall height. But there are some other changes. The other commissioners are correct that they've modified the siding. The original plan had horizontal shingle type siding. They've got some horizontal panels here that aren't shingle style. The windows are pretty similar, but again, we can pull up the other link if you want to see it.
No, that's okay. I agree with Commissioner Brahman that this should be tabled and we should seek making it look more in line with the community, because I mean, you have transition creep then. So this is a transition, but then when this is not transitionally more, then the next house will be transition. Before you know it, we don't have a residential area anymore.
Okay. Commissioner Corcoran?
There's one other change too, and that is that they've pushed the stairwells up above the roof height. So we have these two stairwells sticking up now that weren't there in the original plan. It makes it look more industrial.
Where do you see those?
It's correct. If you can put the maybe you can bring both of those up. Or just bring up the second one again, Emmeline, because the original plan did not have any access to the attic. The stairwell run did not go up to the attic height. So if you look in the right-hand side of that elevation drawing, there's a stair tower that now goes up the full height to allow stair access to the roof.
On the right-hand side of the drawing that's on the bottom of the page now, that's on the screen?
Correct.
So is that, but that doesn't change the overall height of the building from the prior layout, because the gable roof was in that.
Right, the peak of the former roof was above the height of these stair towers.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
they're still lower than that, but yeah, now you see them, whereas that would have been under the roof line of the previous drawing.
Yeah.
If you go to the first page, you can see it more clearly on the other elevation. Because there's two towers.
Right, there's one you can kind of see in the distance.
Go
From
up
the
one more
elevation.
page.
One
Yeah.
more page. That's page 2 of 4.
There you go.
Now I see. Yeah, and that's a door right there that comes out onto the roof.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe they can do something to kind of.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I can communicate that back. I've already had some discussions with the architect on this matter, but I'm getting the the sense of the commission is that it wouldn't necessarily change the outcome, but you'd like to see this read more clearly as a residential building than you believe it's depicted here.
Yep. Okay, so the motion, and I think we beat this one up then. The motion was made by Commissioner Noonan, I think. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So Commissioner Noonan, do you withdraw your motion?
Yes, I do.
All right. And then so now can we have a new motion to table? Commissioner Braman, so moved. Second by Commissioner Braun. Thank you. Do we have any other discussion on the item? Commissioner Francis.
I think we should inquire about music in the evenings, because the house behind it is right there.
Well, they're going to have to comply with audio regulations. I mean, there are time limits on when you can have sort of public music. I mean, even in your backyard, you got to be sensitive to your neighbors, and you can't blast music past 10 o'clock at night. And there is a decibel limit and so forth.
Well, you would hope.
And they're not planning. They're not putting in front of us a plan to have live music. Commissioner Noonan? I'm sorry, Commissioner Francis. Hold on a second, Commissioner Noonan. Commissioner Francis, I thought you were finished, but it seemed like your mouth was. You are trying to talk?
You can have it.
I've
got it on the phone.
We cannot hear you, Commissioner Francis.
Is that better?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I would ask that they build it into their association regulations, that something about music, because you don't want to impact these neighbors any more than they are.
Okay. Very good. Well,
yep, we can inquire.
Pass that along. Certainly, that's reasonable to ask them to build in some internal controls around that. Commissioner Noonan?
The motion at the table, though, includes the recommendations that we're discussing, I assume.
All we're doing is tabling the item, but Mr. Wendt is going to communicate these requests for a revision.
Understood. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, the motion is to table. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Item is tabled unanimously. The next item are new applications to recommend a public hearing. 236 Commerce Drive, special permit application of Pepe's Pizzeria Napolitana for a one-story kitchen addition in the Design Industrial District.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you're familiar with the existing Pepe's location on Commerce Drive. They are seeking a one-story addition out the back for a kitchen expansion. It is a special permit requirement and does require a public hearing.
Very good. Can I have a motion on this? Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner Braun. Public hearing is required on this, so we'll find out all about it at that time and when we get the application in her. Any other questions or comments? Good. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Very good. Any abstentions? Any opposed? All right, the item is moved to public hearing unanimously. The next items on our agenda are old business. We have two related under item 3. These are I'll call them together. We don't have to vote on them together, but at least we can consider where we are. The zoning regulation amendment, application of Fairfield Medical LLC, proposing new section 12.4.29, inclusionary multifamily residential use with a housing opportunity or workforce housing component. That's 3A. And 3B, 4185 Black Rock Turnpike, zoning compliance application of Fairfield Medical LLC pertaining to a 94-unit residential development pursuant to section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went again for the record. As you just indicated, there are two aspects to this application. The first is the regulation amendment. The applicant is seeking a new section 12.4.29 to create an inclusionary multifamily residential community use with a housing opportunity or affordable housing component within the design commercial district regulations. Eligible parcels must be within 300 feet of an entrance or exit ramp of the Merritt Parkway or I-95. Such developments must meet the 8-30G standard of 30% of the dwelling units being deed restricted as below market rate units. The proposed design requirements include a minimum lot size of 2 acres with a minimum lot width of 75 feet, minimum front setback of 20 feet, minimum side setback of 10 feet, and rear setback of 10 feet. Maximum building height of 6 stories or 85 feet, but a maximum of 4 occupied stories above structured parking. Maximum impervious lot coverage of 75%. Minimum parking of 1.25 spaces per unit, and a dwelling unit density of 55 units per acre. Essentially, this design requirements are tailored for the development proposed on this particular subject parcel. So the other component to this, as you know, is a zoning compliance or site plan application, and that application is for the overall development of a 94-unit building. The subject site is approximately 2.3 acres in size, located in a design commercial district. A medical office building was previously approved on this site in October of 2015. A 6-story building is proposed with 4 occupied stories above 2 levels of structured parking on the southerly end of the building and 1 level of parking on the northerly end of the building. The height of the proposed building is 72 feet at the southerly end, closest to the parkway. And again, it's a story height less on the northerly side, or 55 feet on that end of the building. So of the 94 units proposed, they're comprised of 26 one-bedroom units and 68 two-bedroom units. The 29 below market rate units required are proposed to be distributed as 14 units at 80% area median income and 15 units at 60%. The affordable units are proposed to be 8 one-bedroom units and 21 two-bedroom units. The application proposes 139 parking spaces, or 1.48 spaces per unit. The proposed site driveway is opposite the driveway for the hotel across the street and in the same location as approved for the medical office building. The applicant's traffic report estimates the proposed development will generate 34 AM peak hour traffic trips and 41 PM peak hour trips. The report compares this to the projected 60 AM and 84 PM trips for the prior medical office proposal. There were several issues raised during the course of the several hearings we had here. There was a fair amount of testimony on behalf of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy that the proposed building height in such close proximity to the entrance ramp would be detrimental to the historic resources of the parkway and the Merritt Parkway Conservancy offered an alternative massing configuration that in their view would be less impactful to the parkway. In addition, the opposition civil engineer opined that insufficient information has been provided to demonstrate that the drainage system will function properly, asserting that there is not enough separation distance between the bottom of the proposed system and bedrock, and therefore proper infiltration will not occur, nor will there be adequate stormwater volume capacity. And the initial plan was not accompanied by soil boring data. On rebuttal to those concerns, the applicant's engineer reported that soil borings were conducted during the proceedings, and results indicated that there's adequate clearance to bedrock below the proposed drainage system. Additionally, the system is designed to allow for modifications should they encounter conditions that they don't anticipate. The applicant argued that the proposed drainage system is at the same elevation and similar to the design and location of the system that was previously approved on this site for the medical office building. The town engineer has opined through an email that valid concerns were raised and that satisfactory responses have been provided. The engineering department will continue to review any future field data should this plan go forward to ensure that on-site detention system is designed and installed according to their requirements. The applicant further argues that the historic designation in the resources therein of the Merritt Parkway is limited to the right-of-way and not the adjacent properties in viewshed impacts in any event, in their opinion, is limited. So as this commission knows, you've heard this many times, that the standards for review of an affordable housing application differ from a typical zoning application. For denial of an affordable housing application to be sustained, the burden is on the commission to prove based on evidence in the record compiled before the commission that the decision from which an appeal is taken and the reasons cited for it are supported by sufficient evidence in the record. And the commission has the burden to prove that A, the decision is necessary to protect substantial public interest in health, safety, and other matters over which the commission has jurisdiction. And B, such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing. And lastly, that those public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. And you've heard this before, that it's important to note that under the law, it is not necessary for the applicant to amend the zoning regulations or change the zone in order for a project to be approved. The zoning compliance is not mandatory for the approval of an affordable housing application. That is all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, you're muted, Matt.
Thanks. Sorry about that. So thanks very much for that that summary. I mean, this was a lengthy and complicated application. Where to begin? Somebody want to make a motion on this item? Commissioner Noonan?
Yes, I would like to move to table the item. I think we have time based on my understanding of the timeline and timeframes. I'd just like to look at it a little bit longer.
Okay, so a motion to table by Commissioner Noonan. Mr. Wendt, what are the timelines? I see you, Commissioner Braun. I'll be right there. Okay, what are the timelines here? Is that a possibility?
Mr. Chairman, you have without using any additional extension time available to the commission, the 65 days post close of the hearing would run to the 27th of May.
Of May. Okay, so we still have a good, almost 6 weeks. So even if not at the next one, the one after that. But okay, very good. So we're well within our time here. So motion to table by Commissioner Noonan. Commissioner Braun, you had your hand up. Second.
I was just seconding his motion.
Second by Commissioner Braun. Other comments? Other members of the commission on this? Commissioner Corcoran?
I'm just curious about what the open items are that we need to consider.
Well, I mean, for me, frankly, the issues of safety and the the drainage issues, the engineering issues, just the record and reviewing it and deciding the issues that we need to. We have the proposed text amendment as well. Commissioner Noonan? No, you're on mute.
I don't think there's any quote unquote open items. I just would like the extra time to go through it for my own analysis.
Okay.
Commissioner Braun?
I'm trying to remember back to the last hearing. Did we get an update from Mr. Barnhart about the status of our affordable housing progress? Or was it more anecdotal? Did he give us an updated report? Because that might be.
Yeah. I mean, to answer that, we have that information, but it's not part of this record for this application.
In a formal sense, I mean, Mr. Wendt, that doesn't mean to say that we as a body can't recite facts about our community.
Oh, without a doubt, we have. I mean, if you don't have it, we have provided with we can provide you with where we are, snapshot view. We have that information. It has been provided to the commission in the past, or we can certainly forward that to you. If you're are you referring specifically to the moratorium progress, like the
No, well, the moratorium is just a benchmark, really. But in terms of everything we're doing, whether it's the trust fund, the the approved projects, not built yet but approved, that type of thing.
Sure, and the fact that we have recently passed the ADU regulations and the like. We went through that recently, and so my point is, even though that's not formally been presented and made a part of the record per se, we in our deliberations can certainly recite and comment on factual statistics about our town, right, in terms of numbers and projects and things like that. So we can certainly consider that.
One more numbers, just so you may be referencing, again, outside of the scope of this particular application. In the general discussion, I had provided the commission fairly recently a recap or my the staff's analysis of some pending bills before the state legislature. That email with that analysis had a summary of
That's right.
of affordable housing application, total units, and so forth. So take a look at it. If that's not the information, that may be the information that you're referencing. If it's not, please let me know, and we have all that information available to share. If that's not the specific information you're referencing.
Thank you.
Okay. Other members of the commission, questions, comments? The motion on the table is to table 3A and B. Okay, hearing none. Are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Commissioner Francis? No? Any opposed? You're in favor or? Confused. Commissioner Francis? Are you against?
No, I voted in favor.
In favor. Very good. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. So the motion to table the two items is approved unanimously. Thanks. So the next item is item 4A, compliances. We have 1814 Post Road, a zoning compliance application of Mark Bartolone, architect, to establish a food service use in an existing building in the Center Design Business District.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Wendt again for the record. This property is on the northwest corner of the intersection of Post Road and Mill Plain Road. For the last several years, this building has been home to Stevens Tailoring. It's a small building, and before that, long before that, it was once a gas station. The applicant is proposing to change the use from a retail tailor shop to a takeout food service. Lobster Craft is currently kind of diagonally across the street in the rear part of a shopping center across the street. A new parapet is proposed to replace the mansard roof that currently exists, and new entry doors and windows are proposed. The site plan remains the same. No physical changes to the parking area. There's existing curbs and sidewalks present in front of this site already. The proposed use is permitted in the zone, and no additional parking is required to establish this use or take out food service beyond that which is required for the retail use presently existing. The lot is not striped at present, and the applicant is proposing to provide proper striping. And 2 new compliant wall signs are also proposed. That is all I have, unless there's any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner Braun?
We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so is this shorter of the 2 buildings? The one next to it is not part of the project.
Correct. In the photo that I included in the packet, it's the building to the right. The building to the left is not included in this application.
And does any aspect of, I'm thinking back to the community theater, does any aspect of this affect bike, walk, pedestrian, sidewalk, or anything like that?
No, there's a fairly recent vintage. There was work done on this intersection not that long ago to upgrade the crosswalks and pedestrian access there, but there's a fairly new sidewalk along the post road frontage of this building already.
Do you want me to pull up that,
Thank you.
that picture, Jim?
I don't know what the picture, I don't know how old the picture is from the, yeah, you can go ahead. It was from the,
There's the site plan, actually, page 8 of 8 in the application, in the packet. Page 8 of 8, site plan shows the crosswalks and sidewalks and such. Right there. So, you know, the intersection was, well, I say recently,
yeah.
recently redone for pedestrian crossing and access with the lights and the timing and the zone, the crossing zone on the in the changeover, I forget what it's called. But there's the sidewalks there and such. They're not proposing, I mean, this is a compliance application. They're not proposing changes to the structure, the footprint, or, you know, that kind of thing, right?
Correct. They're not proposing any changes to the site whatsoever. They're just making some cosmetic changes to the exterior of the building and obviously interior fit up for their kitchen equipment and so forth.
Right. So then that's,
There you go. One, just slide that one more. There you go. It's the lower of the 2 buildings, the 2-story building on the left-hand side. These 2 buildings abut each other along the property line. So that 2-story building is a separate parcel. So the site plan you were just looking at would be this building with the parking lot to the right, which is outside of the view of this photo.
okay. Great. Thank you, Emily. All right, so we just started in with questions. I don't think we have a motion on the table. So moved by Commissioner Brayman to approve, and second by Commissioner Levy. Thanks. Other questions or follow-up? I mean, this complies with our regulations. Commissioner Francis?
Just, it's impossible to have a sidewalk on the Mill Plain side, right?
Correct. It would run into the railroad bridge abutment.
Yeah, okay. No, it's a good plan. I like it. Very attractive.
Okay, good. Anyone else? Commissioner Brayman?
I just think in addition to complying with the regulations, it happens to be an appropriate plan for the site, appropriate use.
Yes. Nice improvement to their visibility as well, right? As a establishment. It's good. Anyone else? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Raise your hand. Good. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the compliance is approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Next item on our agenda is our public hearing. Before we get started, I know we've received quite a few submissions via email. Thank you very much. If you did submit items in writing, please be rest assured that we read everything. It's part of our record. You don't need to feel compelled to also read that into the record in the public hearing portion, but you're free to participate at that time if you'd like. I will make a call at the conclusion of the applicant's presentation for members of the public who wish to be heard. You can also sign up in the chat box, and Ms. Harrigan will keep a running tally, and we'll call people first in the order they sign up, and then I'll call it again before we close. After the applicant makes their rebuttal, then that will close the public hearing on that item, and I'll move on. So the first item on our public hearing agenda is 1143 Sasko Hill Road, a review of preliminary subdivision plan for the open space proposal. That is, I believe that's Attorney Rizzio. Yes, sir. See your hand.
You
How's
just
your
need to
audio?
mute yourself. Do you see it on the bottom of your screen, Ray? To unmute yourself, it should be all the way on the left. No, if you put your cursor on the bottom of the screen, do you see an unmute button?
Okay, are we
There you
there?
go. Yep.
Yes.
I apologize for the technically challenged, I'm sorry.
right.
Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Raymond Rizzi. I'm representing 1143 Sasko Hill Road LLC with regard to a subdivision application that we'll be putting forth before you. As in your subdivision regulations, you need, when you're proposing open space, which you need to do, if you're in excess of a certain size and a certain number of lots, you need to propose 10% of your property as open space. That the board has a review of that prior to submitting the application. Our client is purchasing 1143 Sasko Hill Road. The property contains over 20 acres of land. Currently the property contains a single family dwelling, 3 guest houses, a gatehouse, and which also contain dwelling units. Chris Russo was with me tonight. If Emmeline, I'm not sure if you allow him to share the screen would be great. Chairman, I can bring up a site plan to help take you through and navigate through this process, and then we have some other stuff that we'll be presenting. So we're proposing to subdivide the property into 7 lots and construct a private road off Sasko Hill Road. Currently, you can see the dwellings that currently exist overlaid. You basically have the main dwelling, which you see on the proposed lot 2. You see another dwelling on lot 1. You see another dwelling on lot 7. And then you see the boathouse down below, which everybody probably knows adjacent to Sasko Hill Road. The site is subject to a conservation easement. Now, this is a private conservation easement. I think this is really important for about 6.4 acres of land. You'll see that in gray. That runs to Aspetuck Land Trust. We have been in discussions with the Aspetuck Land Trust with regard to the subdivision. I think you'll hear from them tonight, and with regard to our open space plan. This has been a very open and communicative process, and I think they're represented by Joel Green, who I saw is on there tonight. So they have a declaration. This old restriction is probably over 20 years old, was put on a previous landowner. And what this old restriction does it basically puts certain restrictions on the property, and it's not, it's labeled as a conservation easement. It's basically some restrictive covenants. However, it does allow the applicant to do a number of things within this conservation area. For example, we have the authority to install a helipad, to land helicopters there. We also have the authority to put swimming pools, paved walkways. Currently, this whole site is serviced by septic systems. Our client's intention is to connect to the sewers and run the sewers up from basically Country Club Fairfield, which will allow additional properties to connect to the sewers, which are solely serviced by septic. And all 7 of these lots will be serviced by by now the municipal system. We have been to the WPCA. We think this is an excellent addition. It's also helped a conservation aspect to get rid of these septic areas in such a pristine and sacred area. So it allows us to also install septic systems within this conservation area. It allows us to place temporary structures such as tents for special events like a fundraiser or wedding. We can cultivate lawns, gardens, grazing pastures, and even the installation of fencing. So this is not a true open space. It's basically some restrictive covenants. Aspetuck Land Trust, working with a previous developer, kind of just wanted to not see anything overly large up against the shoreline. But that's certainly much different than an open space, which the open space which we're proposing tonight. So as I said, the plan that we're proposing does not require one single variance. Everything fits within all of your subdivision regulations. The proposed road will not require any maintenance by the private road will not require any maintenance by the town, and we're in effect privately subsidizing the extension of a sewer system to benefit other landowners along Sasko Hill Road and to benefit the future of these property owners. And also, this plan is going to significantly bolster the conservation restriction. As I said, the open space that we're proposing, in an open space where we'll no longer be able to install a helicopter or a swimming pool in these restricted areas. We will not be able to, we'll be able to connect to city sewer and water, so it will remove the requirement of the ability to install septic systems within this area. So previously, if we wanted to put, without our open space, we would be able to put a house up against the restricted area and then put a septic system within that restricted area. And we're further going to restrict the area's lawns, gardens, grazing pasture to any type of fencing. And then we've talked to the last Aspetuck Land Trust. Willie Kenny will be presenting to you when we go through the subdivision application, a plan which will install native grasses and plantings, which will help bolster the bird habitat in the coastal meadow that has flourished in this area. This is one of the only areas in town where we actually have a coastal meadow. And we believe in working with the Aspetuck Land Trust and further enhancing this restrictive covenant, but then also laying on top of this open space area will further bolster the ability to protect this area for the future. Keep in mind, whenever you have a private restriction and it's not deemed open space in connection with approval, that is not something that is in perpetuity. It is an agreement that could be worked out between the two parties that either imposed it or benefit from it. This will change that. This open space area will be dedicated in perpetuity. And as part of our subdivision would not be modified or restricted or changed without any permission from the Planning and Zoning Commission. What's important is when you look at, I apologize if I have a little technical issue. When you look at this, at your regulations, section 2.3, the subdivision regulations, any land in excess of 4 acres shall dedicate 10% of the land as open space. We have designated 10% of this open space along the shoreline, which contains the existing coastal meadow. This is the most important site to conserve, probably along the shoreline, that basically the town will get their hands on. Everything else is pretty much privately held and not subject to this size where you'll have this type of development, which will be subject to the open space regulations. Under section 2.3.1.3, there are very specific objectives that this open space, we believe, satisfies. Number one of the objectives you need to satisfy is to preserve the land as undeveloped open space, which preserves the appearance, character, and natural beauty of the area. Under section 2.3.1.5, another objective is to preserve the land for the purpose of conserving natural resources. And section 2.3.16 is to preserve and protect particular areas and terrain having quantities of natural beauty of historic interest. We think we clearly satisfy all those three objectives in the area that we've designated. So this is the longest and largest portion of undeveloped property along the Fairfield coastline. Bill Kenny, our landscape architect, has told us this may be the only example of coastal meadows on the Fairfield shoreline. Coastal meadows have become increasingly rare in the Northeast. They attract a completely different type of wildlife and bird habitat than coastal forest areas and salt marshes. The proposed open space plan will preserve it in perpetuity. No helipads, no swimming pools, no septic systems, no grazing, no cutting of the, and clear cutting of the property. The previous, it was called the conservation, but the previous restrictive covenants were really designated with regard to view. Unfortunately, the Conservation Commission did not really review this, and I don't think they took into account all of the items that could be put in this area. I don't think they took into account the private nature of this restriction that could be modified or changed without any input from the town. And most importantly, I don't think they understood that what we're proposing will preserve this in perpetuity. The main goal of the previous restriction really was protecting the view and the look from the water. This will not only protect the view, but it will protect the natural resources that currently exist on the site, which we think is tremendously important. Our client is working feverishly with Bill Kenny and the Aspetuck Land Trust to boost the meadow habitat as bird species have actually moved into this meadow. In accordance with section 2.3.3 of your subdivision regulations, we are proposing to transfer the open space to an association of the property owners, also subject and as part of any approval of a subdivision. The main reason is due to the cost of maintenance, not only maintenance of the coast habitat, which requires regular control of invasive species that can threaten the meadow, but also with the existing revetment along the shoreline, which protects the meadow from damage and erosion. If any of you have walked along this area from basically Sasko Hill Road, you can around the corner when it's low tide, almost all the way to South Pine Creek. We'll show you some pictures. There's a very expensive revetment that needs to be maintained. And on the South Pine Creek side, you'll also end up seeing a very steep cliff, which is one of the reasons we're not proposing any public access. We believe currently public access exists all along the shoreline. And when I show you the pictures of what's in our open space that we need to maintain, you'll see that I believe that there is certainly significant enough public access, and that we would basically put ourselves in a situation liability-wise, danger-wise, and privacy-wise that I think that public access should not be required in this instance. In discussing this, yes.
Thanks. Sorry to interrupt you. Can you just talk a little bit more about that public access aspect of this? There is I think a property line that goes to the the high mean water line, right?
Correct.
There is access and members of the public can access and use the beach and the water, as the tide recedes below the high mean water line, and they could potentially walk all the way, across the frontage of the property. Just give some more background and commentary on what the proposal is in terms of how you would expect that, or you would limit, public access to the to the areas. the open
If I
space.
get Chris to bring up some pictures, I think if I take you through the tour, you'll realize why from a liability perspective, from a safety perspective. So basically that revetment, which is what protects the property, connects that, you see all those coastal meadow, that revetment is you see coming from Sasko Hill Road. If you come off the Sasko Hill Beach, you can walk, this is the property that's below high tide, and you can walk along that area all the way along to South Pine Creek. So let's take this revetment, which needs to be maintained, needs to be paid for. And if you could see, if you had public access, you would either be able to, which is one of the problems, this coastal meadow, if you had people traipsing through it, it would endanger the bird habitat, endanger this coastal meadow, and we plan to even increase that amount. So this is the revetment that exists. So now we're looking basically from the Sasko Hill Beach. Keep in mind, let's talk it to the low side of our property where you see, Chris, if you can show me pictures. This is where all the shellfish beds are. So there already currently is public access there because the town shellfish beds are located in front of the site. So you have all this area that basically provides public access all along the shoreline. Chris, let's keep taking.
Right, and my point here is that you're not proposing to change that.
Not at all.
Right.
What we're not doing is offering it over the revetment or through the coastal meadows, which we're looking to preserve as open space.
Right, and I think therein is really the communication that needs to be sort of stated, articulated. You know, we talk about this quote unquote conservation easement. That's the title of the document, but it's not an easement in favor of the Conservation Commission of the town of Fairfield or the state DEEP. That is an easement in favor of a private party. It's actually a nonprofit, right? But it's a private party. When we talk about dedicating open space, people typically associate that with the dedicated park-like areas that are called open space in the town of Fairfield, right? Like we have here on Mill Hill Road, where you have a sign, there's a parking area, there's a gate, people walk in, there are trails that are maintained, there are bridges that are maintained, and people ice skate on ponds, and it's literally open space. It's accessible by the public and intended to be used by the public. So, you know, why is this different from that, the requirement to dedicate open space in the regulations?
Well, in the objectives, it's not just to require access to this public access to this open space. The objectives are numerous, and they are to, as I talked about before, and the board doesn't have to find every one of them, but what you see is when you talk about your sections of regulations, you talk about preserving undeveloped open space, which preserves the appearance, character, and natural beauty of an area. We think full public access to this will do the exact opposite. It will drive the birds away. We're talking about removing the ability to put any kind of paved walkways through this area, removing the ability to put temporary tents there, removing the ability, and then secondly, to be able to police this area to protect the area. Another objective is to preserve the land for the purpose of conserving natural resources. We believe large public access across this will actually have a detrimental effect on the natural resources. And also to preserve particular areas and terrain having qualities of natural beauty or historic interest. There is nothing that prevents the public from accessing below the revetment. If you look at this revetment, the last thing we want to do is have people traipsing up and across these rocks or, you know, endangering themselves or falling and breaking an ankle. It's just a liability nightmare. But if you look at the amount of area between the revetment and the water, and the fact that the shellfish beds are there all the time, the public has access to this, and I think will only enhance the public's enjoyment of this by preserving the coastal meadow and the natural resources that exist on our property in perpetuity. So, Chris, just show a couple more pictures so you can explain. We can take them through. I'd like to go around the corner. So that's the revetment. That is this coastal meadow that we're talking about. As you can see, you have the ability to walk. Basically, that wall is where our property line is. You see the concrete wall that sits below the stone wall, all of that area currently has public access all the way around in front of the boathouse. Now, this is as you proceed to what we'll call the South Pine Creek side, you have in effect a cliff there. And somebody would have to climb up the revetment or go back and forth the revetment and up on this cliff, and we just believe it's a liability nightmare. Keep going, Chris. And there's access. I've walked all the way around this. So here's our revetment that protects that cliff from basically falling into the water. Go ahead, Chris. Keep taking us on our tour. The fence line is basically our property line. Our property is trying to keep people from not going over there. And there, as you see, as you can walk all the way around and walk over to South Pine Creek, that you can see that's the condominium project at the end of South Pine Creek Road. And if you look at the amount of area for which the public can access this area, it's fantastic. We have spoken to both of our neighbors, our neighbor across the street, Mr. Rosani, and another neighbor directly who owns the property, this property that abuts us toward the South Pine Creek side, Mr. Samuelson, and they both support this open space feature. They both support the ability that they'd like to see this area preserved on top. As you can see, there's currently access, there's signs there that tell the public where to come and where to go. So to have additional public access on the top creates a liability issue, creates a dangerous situation as relates to conserving this natural resource that currently exists and that we are going to enhance in connection with working through a plan with the Aspetuck Land Trust. Is that helpful at all on that tour? Show you that there's basically any public access that we're going to add is not going to add anything to the public's ability to use that waterfront. What it will do is have a negative effect on the natural resources that we're trying to preserve pursuant to the objectives set forth in your subdivision regulations.
Right. And so, I see Commissioner Corcoran, I see Commissioner Levy, and so let me just finish, and Commissioner Braun. So, you mentioned the Aspetuck Land Trust, right? So that is the entity in whose favor the easement currently exists, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And so what is going to happen to that easement? That is going to remain in place, and is the dedication to open space, is the Aspetuck Land Trust going to have any involvement in that going forward?
Yes, very much so. Joel Green is here tonight. It's nice to be on the same side of the table as Joel Green. I'm not used to this, so I don't know when I should introduce him, but he represents the Aspetuck Land Trust, who we've been talking this through. The important thing about this open space is this will not be dictated by the Aspetuck Land Trust. It will be dictated by it will be maintained by a homeowners association, yet will be bound by its subdivision approval, and no changes to this open space could come about without the approval of the Conservation Commission and your commission as a modification of a subdivision approval.
Because it's being dedicated as open space. Because it's being dedicated as open space. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
All right,
And that's the difference.
All right. So
currently the commission has just to be careful. Currently, the commission has no authority with regard to what happens.
It's private land. It's private land,
Exactly.
and the only thing is that there's an easement in favor of another private entity.
Exactly. Now we turn this into public open space.
Yeah, understood. Okay, so we have a couple of commissioners who I think have questions at this juncture. And then, you're free to call Attorney Green as a witness, in support of your application, or he can take the opportunity to make his arguments, present his evidence, during the public comment portion of the hearing in support of your application. Either way you want to play it. But I think I had Commissioner Levy first, then Corcoran, then Braun. Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman. Attorney Rizzio, what is the status of that boathouse? Is that in the public domain there below the mean high water tide, or what?
It is within the private property. It's on the right. If Chris, if you can bring up the site plan again, it borders the property and basically would be a pre-existing non-conforming use. that, as you can see, sits right within the Aspetuck Land Trust view easement, but is something of an amenity will be an amenity to the property owner.
Mhm. Where
However,
is,
it's still subject to all the restrictions that are governed by the Aspetuck easement to the Aspetuck Land Trust.
so does the mean high water run basically to the south of the building?
Yes, you'll see everything basically outside of the gray, the Aspetuck Land Trust easement, which is in gray, basically mimics the shoreline all the way down to the mean high water mark.
Mhm.
Right.
My next question is the area, would it just be the area within the sort of dotted lines,
Correct.
both to the west and the east, with nothing in between where the boathouse is?
Correct, which will still be subject to the view easement. That is something that people want to continue to access. People in the community have expressed that people love that boathouse is a marker. That boathouse is something that still can be used. That boathouse is, basically like almost like a lighthouse. I mean, it's an iconic piece of building that we would like to preserve and keep there.
Mhm. Is it, during low tide, is it possible to walk around that boathouse?
If Chris has a picture, we can show you that. Yeah, if you want to scale the revetment and kind of try and go around, let's go, Chris, to that picture of the
Well, I
boathouse.
think the point there is when it's low tide, that you can walk, on the flats around the boathouse, can
There you
continue
go.
along.
Mhm.
See that, Commissioner Levy, can you see that picture?
Yeah,
It's pretty clear.
so you could walk under the balcony, sort of?
Yeah, well, yeah, the balcony's probably right on the property line, so you'd walk right in front of the balcony.
Okay. And then just one last question. I can appreciate the need for a fence where you have a cliff, but I think our regulations sort of in the beach area preclude fences between the property line and the beach area. Is there any provision to avoid a lot of fences going up along the sort of
Yes,
southern?
there is. That's you'll see that in our you'll see that in our formal open space plan when we submit with the subdivision as to the ability of any fencing, and nothing along the shoreline. And that's one thing we're working through with the Aspetuck Land Trust.
Very good. Thank you.
Next, I think was, and I don't know if I got the order correct, but it's either Commissioner Braun or Corcoran. Let's go with Braun first.
Yeah, can you just clarify again on the site plan?
Sure.
The larger light gray area is the existing conservation restriction between
Correct.
Aspetuck Land Trust and the property owner.
Correct.
And where is the existing dwelling of the property owner? Is that staying or is that?
So what we anticipate is we laid this out so that we could preserve the main house, which you see on lot 2. The lots 1 and lot 7, which currently have non-conforming residential structures, will be raised and homes will be built within the setbacks. Except, I'm sorry, lot 7 is within the setbacks. I apologize, but certainly lot 1. And I would assume lot 3 will also be raised because it's within the setbacks and we can't get a subdivision without showing you that it's going to be, the portion outside the setbacks is going to be removed. But we tried to design lot 2 to preserve the main house, which is just a grand, tremendous old home that we hope will be restored.
And the darker crosshatch area, is that what you're proposing for the open space dedication?
Yes, the cross-hatched area is the open space. It runs basically up to the boathouse lot and then within a few feet of Sasko Hill Road and then over close to our neighbor up to the north of us, who also does not really want people traversing his cliff or getting up there and figuring they can't get a way out except to go through his property. And you'll see there's a letter that's been supplied by Mr. Samuelson, who owns that property directly above us, and then the other neighbor directly across the street who would like to see this open space proposal adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And the acreage of the open space proposed of those two strips within the existing conservation restriction, which is expected to remain? What's the acreage of the,
It's over 2 acres.
oh, okay.
I think it's 2.04 acres. We have like 20 acres of open space.
Okay. And will the homeowners of the new 7 houses, will they have access through the easement down to the shoreline?
The only, no, they would have to, the owners would have to have, the only way to get, they would get to the shoreline would be, in effect, the open space easement. Yeah, well, the people who own their individual lots would be able to walk on that area. But that would, and they would be able to get rid of invasive species. The open space, which will be maintained by the homeowners association, they'll bear all the expense of keeping it keeping it open and complying with the open space dedication that that's gonna occur with your subdivision, right? With the approval of the subdivision.
So you would have in the crosshatched area, which is the narrower strips within the larger restriction.
Yes.
You would have both Aspetuck Land Trust and Conservation Department sort of having stewardship or monitoring or enforcement right over that?
100%, except exactly. Now what you have, instead of an agreement between 2 private parties, you have the ability for the public to control and have it, or certainly the town to control what goes on within that easement in this open space area.
And the rest of the whole thing is going to remain as, I guess, Aspetuck Land Trust will weigh in on that. And, you know, if
Correct.
so, between 2 private parties, they could lift it if they both wanted to, although it's doubtful Aspetuck Land Trust would, I suppose.
You never know. Put it this way, there is an additional restriction that would run in perpetuity that could not be changed without the approval of the Conservation Commission and this Planning and Zoning Commission that currently does not exist.
And that's only on the crosshatched area.
Correct. The balance is whatever could be worked out between the 2 parties. And, you know, I think the intent is always to live by and enhance that current easement that exists. And I think you'll hear from Mr. Green that they believe this open space dedication will go a long way to doing that.
One last question. The Conservation Commission voted, they didn't want to recommend that we accept the open space donation. They prefer that we accept money, a fee in lieu. Could you explain? The letter doesn't say much. It just says, actually doesn't, I don't think it gives a reason, but
It doesn't.
I think their reasoning might have been that it's protected anyway, so we don't need you to re-protect it. Is that
Yeah,
the
I don't
reason,
think-
or were there other environmental reasons for
Well,
that?
No, Mr. Jones made a recommendation, who basically makes recommendations to the Conservation Commission. I don't think he really reviewed the easement that currently exists, and they looked at it like, well, this is protected already. And we tried to explain to them, it really isn't protected to the way an open space easement normally is. And they just figured, you know what, since it's protected, let's grab a deed and a fee in lieu. But what they didn't take into account is looking at your subdivision regulations. And your subdivision regulations are very specific. It says the commission can get a fee in lieu when it determines there are inadequate areas worthy of preservation. I don't know of a property in Fairfield that is more worthy of preservation than these strips of property along this shoreline. I mean, given to the fact that they've already had some degree of preservation because it was so important to a previous landowner. So I don't think you had a bunch of new members. I don't think they basically just took the consultant's recommendation was that, you know, we have some level of protection, let's just grab the money. That's not what your regulations say. Your regulations say you can do a fee in lieu when you've determined that there are inadequate areas in the subdivision which merit preservation. I don't think anybody on this call is going to say that area doesn't merit preservation. It's the largest undeveloped portion of the shoreline. It's one of the only examples of coastal meadows, which is an endangered habitat in the entire Northeast. The DEP has a whole initiative to preserve meadows because it's caused a massive decline in the bird populations. We're gonna enhance all that, On top of that, it's going to be preserved in perpetuity that can't be changed can't be changed unless it's approved by your commission and the Conservation Commission in the future. You do not have any authority over those areas currently.
How much is the fee? Or who does that calculation?
They take a percentage of what the land value is worth as determined by the assessor. To me, the amount of the fee is kind of inadequate. I don't think you get to the amount of the fee because you don't get to the point where you can determine that there's an inadequate area in this subdivision which merits preservation.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the assessor does have a number, on the parcel, and it's a calculation, and you do have an idea of what the fee calculation would be, to consider.
But what I was saying, Chairman, is to be fair, it's not supposed to be a money grab.
No, not at all.
It's supposed to be when you determine there's nothing there worth preserving, then maybe we should take some money in exchange. And then the assessor figures out the calculation. In this instance, I don't think we get to that calculation. You don't weigh money against preservation. You have to start off and determine that there's nothing there worth preserving. I don't think you get there.
Right.
That's what I was trying to get to.
And sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Brown.
No, you go. That's right.
No, please. I interrupted you. Please go.
I was just going to say, the fee in lieu would be for unimproved land as it is now, right? Not once,
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
The meadows you're talking about, the area you're preserving is fairly narrow, but it gets wide at certain points. Are the meadows mostly in that, or are they like up closer to the houses? Or I worry because homeowners do tend to encroach sometimes.
No, the meadows are in the area that we designated. You got to remember why it's not in the where the boathouse is because that area has always been maintained and gone in accordance with the main lot. As you can see, this is the area where all the meadows exist, which is all within our crosshatch property.
Okay.
We're also going to present to you when we do our subdivision application an enhancement of those coastal meadows to make it even more adaptable for the birds.
Okay. Thank you. And I think we need to move on. Commissioner Corcoran?
Yeah, I have a couple questions about access. So in the public area, who will have access? Is it all the homeowners, or is it just those?
Go back to the site plan, Chris. The homeowners with which, you got to remember, we're going from one parcel to 7 parcels. So correct. The only people that will have access to the property are the people who easements are on their property.
The landowners. So lot 7,
Correct.
The owner of lot 7 can walk down through the easement to the water, but they can't go on lot 6. They can't
Correct.
go over onto lot 5. And if you
Correct.
scroll up, the owners of lot 1 can't go on lot 7, 5, 6, or right? I mean,
Correct.
am I phrasing that correctly?
Correct. And you want the owners of first of all, the association will have to take care of it. They got to get rid of invasive species. You'll hear from Bill Kenny at our subdivision application that this is important. And that's why you don't want to put this on the town also, because the revetment needs consistent care. And so does the coastal meadow.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Corcoran, keep going.
So for the open spaces, they're only open to the people who have the underlying property?
Correct, but they're now restricted in perpetuity to preserve them as open and the only activities that can occur there would be consistent with maintaining the open space.
So the open space isn't for the whole development. It's just each bit of open space is limited to the person who owns the underlying property.
Correct, because there's no longer one piece of property. There's 7 pieces of property subject to an open space easement. Each property will be subject to an open space easement and an easement to the Aspetuck Land Trust.
Okay. So on the property that has the boathouse,
Yeah.
again, that is just for that lot. And the uses that are available through the Aspetuck Land Trust would still exist, like to put a swimming pool in?
We're working that through with Attorney Green now, and that'll all be worked out by the time we get to your subdivision application.
And you, I heard you quickly mention it as being a view easement a few minutes ago. Is there some provision that it's can't grow so high as to block the view, and somebody's going to?
What happened if people who've read the restrictive easement, which I think the chairman has been through it, it basically it all talks about preserving this view in this character that it looks like an open. This is a pristine shoreline. We want to keep it that way. We don't want houses built up to the water, and we want to have this nice setback that preserves that view from the water, or from the of the whole shoreline, or actually from anybody who also can traverse it along the beachfront.
Okay, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a limited view of screens now. Before Attorney Rizzio moves on, other members of the commission have any questions at this point? Okay, I don't see anyone and I don't hear anyone. So Attorney Rizzio, please continue. Thank you.
Well, as you can see, I think we believe this this application and this plan satisfies the main objectives of your open space requirements. We would respectfully request this commission adopt or recommend for approval this open space application as we move forward with our subdivision application, where the commission will formally approve our subdivision application and the extent of the open space dedication. All right, if the commission has any other questions, I think we'll listen to Attorney Green, and then if I can just reserve my right on rebuttal if anything else should pop up.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much. So we'll move now to the public comment portion of the public hearing on this item. And so, just by way of introduction, I think it makes sense for us to call upon Attorney Green for the Aspetuck Land Trust as our first participant, and then we'll go to the chat box and see if anyone signed up, and then I'll make a call for members of the public that are on the phone that wish to be heard. Okay, so Attorney Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff. I just want to adjust that. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening representing the Aspetuck Land Trust, which I know many of you are familiar with. It was founded in 1966. Aspetuck Land Trust has preserved over 1,800 acres of land that will be maintained in its natural state. We have been involved in preserving and conserving open space, including farmland, forest land, and coastal lands in Easton, Weston, Fairfield, and Westport, and beyond. I also appear before you this evening on behalf of the Sasko Hill Neighborhood Association. I know that this commission is familiar with the Neighborhood Association. The Neighborhood Association has existed for over 10 years, and it's been involved in promoting responsible development in the Sasko Hill neighborhood over that period. And I know we've appeared before you in opposition to certain applications with Sasko Hill, and in fact, in favor of shaping certain applications such as One Sasko Hill, which we were proud to be involved with. So it's a pleasure to be here with the applicant this evening. And as this commission recognizes, the applicant, this is really sort of an advisory or a recommendation that the applicant is seeking from the commission. I know that you've asked a lot of questions, and the chair got right to the meat of the matter in that what the Aspetuck Land Trust has now is a conservation restriction, and it is far from I think conservation easement is sort of a misunderstood term, as the chair pointed out. It connotes a lot of things and can mean a lot of things. Um, uh, and in this case, we have certain restrictions. And the restrictions are not perfect in terms of achieving the sort of preservation of this property that would be consistent with the mission of Aspetuck. I should also note, by the way, and I was remiss in not introducing David Brandt, the executive director of Aspetuck Land Trust, who's here this evening. And he's available. He'll be available to ask questions. But just to review the history, we've been engaged, Aspetuck Land Trust and Sasko Hill Neighborhood Association have been engaged for approximately the past 3 weeks or a month in really meaningful discussions with the applicant. And those discussions have centered around sort of fortifying and increasing the meaning of the restrictions in ways that are more consistent with the mission of both Aspetuck and Sasko Hill. I think Ray did a very good job of sort of highlighting what the restrictions provide now. And as this commission recognizes, lawns can be created in that gray shaded area at present. Cattle can be grazed. I mean, there is the notion of swimming pools and helipads and that kind of thing. But the sort of the consistency that Aspetuck is looking for, and I think that the thing that is priceless in terms of how this application is shaped and how this application goes forward is preserving what is the viewscape and what is the natural habitat of this area. And that's been really the center of our negotiations. And we are talking about eliminating so many of those features that would threaten this land as natural habitat. David Brandt can really explain to this commission the fact that of the land that Aspetuck has under its stewardship, on much of it, we do promote public access to allow the public to have access to the beauty of these natural resources. But there are certainly assets that the Aspetuck Land Trust protects where it is not consistent to necessarily have direct public access in, on, or through those properties because these constitute delicate habitats. Our objectives in the discussions with the applicant are to provide those kinds of protections that will in perpetuity preserve the what I'll call the gray area and the entire gray area, not just the area that's being proposed as dedicated open space, but the entire gray area to create a robust natural habitat. Certainly, I think this commission recognizes, if you've seen this property from Sasko Beach, if you've seen this property from Southport Beach, if you've seen this property, if you've been lucky enough to view it from Long Island Sound, it is iconic property. It is irreplaceable. It is priceless in terms of sort of the viewscape that it provides and in terms of the potential habitat that it provides. I think it's probably appropriate for me to just, before I sum up, to maybe call on David Brandt to offer some comments on the importance of preserving this land as natural habitat as is proposed. So I'll turn it over to David, if I may, for a moment, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Joel. Well, as you all know, we do have a conservation easement on the property currently, in addition to the neighboring property. And it's our role as a land trust to kind of monitor that easement in perpetuity. That's one of our roles. We have a number of easements throughout the regional area that we serve. But, you know, this particular property, I think, is very unique because of where it is. I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody said. I think everybody's done a great job of talking about the property and the ecosystem services that it provides and the natural habitat. But what we're excited about is that the property owner is actually making a commitment to increase the natural habitat, to increase the ecosystem services, to strengthen that easement, which is really important. There's just not that much land left on the coast that's natural. All you have to do, I mean, I live in Fairfield, all you have to do is especially walk down that beach. There's just not much left there in terms of, natural material for insects and wildlife and birds. So, this really falls into our main initiative that we're working on right now, which is our green corridor. We've laid out a 40,000 acre corridor, and we're really working to try and create biodiversity within the corridor. And this particular property is part of that green corridor that we have laid out. And our main goal, in addition to protecting land in the green corridor, is really to try to increase biodiversity on the thousands of properties that exist within the green corridor. Knowing that Aspetuck Land Trust can't protect all of the open spaces in this corridor in our towns. We have town open space, we have state open space, we have Aspetuck Land Trust open space. What exists in between these open spaces are homeowners. And these homeowners are really critical in what they can do to essentially increase biodiversity, essentially creating biological corridor. So what people do on their own yards makes a tremendous difference. And so the fact that there's 6 acres here that we can improve upon for migratory birds and insects and wildlife is really tremendous. So I always say, we love to have public access, but not all of our properties have public access. The people have the beach. Let's leave this coastal habitat for the birds and the insects because they really need it, because there's just not a lot left. And the coastal habitats are particularly important, especially for migratory birds. So I think we're pretty excited about the prospect of strengthening, the easement and working with a homeowner that is committed to doing that. And we're doing that with thousands of other homeowners in the green corridor. This happens to be extra special because of its size and the location, especially as it's down right on the edge of that Mill River corridor that spills out, into Southport Harbor. So that's what I would have to say about this particular area.
Excellent. So I have a question or two, and then I want to throw it open to the other commissioners. Commissioner Braun, I see your hand for questions. So first of all, you mentioned other easements on other private property in favor of the land trust for which the public does not have access. I'd like for our purposes to focus on the open space dedication requirements. Are there examples of other open space dedications under our regulations, as we see here, where there is land which is notable for preservation and appropriate to be dedicated to open space, as we're advocating here, and yet at the same time not available for public access, right? So is this request a unicorn in the nature of the granting of open space under our regulations pursuant to this, these regulations, or is this would be one of many properties for which there would be an open space dedication, but for which the public would not have access?
Are you asking Aspetuck Land Trust that question?
Well, if Aspetuck Land Trust is involved in any of those, then yeah, if you're aware of any of those, I'll ask Attorney Green or Attorney Rizzo. But yeah, that's what is I think of what I think we should understand.
I know that Aspetuck Land Trust has a number of subdivision set-aside pieces of property that we've received through, the set-aside statute, if you will. And there are very few of those allow public access because they're so small.
Right,
in this
so,
particular, yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
But in this particular case, I would say, we also, as a land trust, we have to look at public benefit, and public benefit just isn't public benefit for the human beings. Public benefit is benefit for the larger all of the living things. And I would say the public actually has most of the benefit in this particular case, in my opinion, because they're able to walk down the beach. And I would say that the protecting that little upland area, whether it's the 2 acres that is going to be now open space through the set aside rule, or the larger 6 acres, because they've committed to increasing the habitat ecosystem services on the larger parcel. I would say that is best left, to wildlife that has, so little habitat as it is along the coast.
Chairman, I would add, I've been involved with many subdivisions in my 30 years where, especially the smaller 6, 7 lots, where they don't have a public access way. It's preservation of the rights. They typically surround wetlands, ponds, pools, and the last thing they want to do is be having trails traipsing through these private neighborhoods. But it's a matter of preserving the ecological benefits and the conservation part of it that happens in many subdivisions. In fact, in the smaller subdivisions, you'll have a lot more conservation easements that don't have any kind of public access because they're typically protecting either the wetland areas or the upland areas around the wetland areas, and they don't want the public traipsing through those particular areas.
So what I'm really driving at is also, the regulations are to preserve the land for the purpose of conserving natural resources. I mean, that's one of the fundamental aspects of it. And while it says open space, it's a bit of a misnomer that equates to public access to that open space. And I do understand that the Aspetuck Land Trust is involved in maintaining and cooperating with many open space dedications under these regulations, and that's why I asked the question to David. Can you talk a little bit about how you would cooperate, the Aspetuck Land Trust, cooperate with the homeowners association in maintaining both the conservation easement, the existing easement in favor of Aspetuck, but also the land now, which is proposed to be dedicated to the open space. So, who would fundamentally be responsible for maintaining all of that?
So we are in the process of negotiating a detailed agreement with the applicant that would assign roles and responsibilities. And, I also have to drop back, and Mr. Brandt can obviously speak to this as well, but I know even our town is experienced with the notion that there is oversight and there is supervision and there are consequences of public access as well. Now, certainly, first and foremost and primarily, we support the Aspetuck Land Trust supports the notion of public access to resources where it's appropriate, but there is an oversight. There's a responsibility for oversight. There's a cost of oversight. And I would point out, and sort of shifting to my Sasko Hill Neighborhood Association role and putting that hat on, at present, and I know you're all familiar with the beach there, and if you try to go to that beach on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from Memorial Day through, well, probably June, and at some point in June through Labor Day, you can't get into that beach on a weekend by the middle of the day. I mean, it's a highly used, that parking lot is full frequently, and it's a heavily traveled and highly used area. And I don't know that, and I asked today actually about at the end of South Pine Creek, sort of looping the other way around that point. There is not a lot of infrastructure there to support what I'll call a public amenity under any circumstances. And I'm not sure that, once again, the public use is necessarily consistent with the preservation of wildlife and preservation of habitat, as David has indicated. But certainly this is not a unicorn. And let me suggest this. Right at the moment, the applicant is before the commission seeking a recommendation that would roll into a full subdivision application to the commission. So this applicant will be back. What we envision is continuing with the support of this commission. What Aspetuck Land Trust anticipates is continuing a negotiation and creating a document that we can present to this commission at the time that the subdivision application is before you, that is consistent with what we have presented this evening, and that provides the commission with assurances that in fact there are meaningful protections being implemented that will preserve and protect this land as wildlife habitat in a true way, and not just as a means of creating private property or private rights, but truly something that does benefit the public and does benefit the community. And if this commission feels at the time that the subdivision is presented that the agreement is not consistent, then certainly this commission is not bound to necessarily accept it at that time. So I offer that, and we look forward to full transparency and sharing the kinds of rights and protections that Aspetuck both expects in this negotiation, but that we as an organization have a responsibility to present to our stakeholders and our members to show that, you know, that this that what we're doing here is consistent with our mission. Is that fair, David, in terms of going forward, in terms of the organizational responsibility?
Yes, I think it is, Joel.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Commissioner Braun?
So I'm assuming it will no longer be primarily a view easement. It will be truly an ecological protection easement. So you're upping some of perhaps Aspetuck Land Trust's monitoring or stewardship or working with the homeowners. My concern is usually lawns tend to expand and encroach if somebody's not watching. So it's something you're considering with the larger conservation easement?
So that's a great question. One of the points of negotiation and one of the early points was at present, when the restrictions were negotiated, the property owner still had the ability to create lawns. And the first thing that we are doing is eliminating that, the ability to create lawns over all but an area adjacent to the boathouse and, you know, access to that boathouse in that area. And we will be presenting a landscape plan that Bill Kenny is working on that will show that, for example, the ability to establish lawns will be limited to a very discrete area. And we are truly talking about creating a landscape plan that has natural native plantings on a large area of the conservation easement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the commission have questions for Attorney Green of the Aspetuck Land Trust?
Oh, there's actually one point, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Another thing that's happening, and I don't know if Attorney Rizzio touched on it, but at present, there are septic tanks and leaching facilities in this property. And as part of our negotiations and as part of the subdivision plan, frankly, that, you know, that was established before our negotiations began, the applicant is eliminating sort of that underground septic that exists. And so that's obviously an improvement to water quality, and obviously is also important to Aspetuck in terms of what's going on underground in terms of leaching and sort of underground facilities.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? All right, very good, thank you, Attorney Green and the Land Trust. Appreciate your input here. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Ms. Harrigan, do we have anyone signing up?
We have Matthew Halleck, who has requested to speak.
Okay, Mr. Halleck.
Hi, thanks. And I appreciate everything you do, especially Aspetuck, to preserve everything. I'm not really down on closing off the beach though to public access. Did I hear you right then, Attorney Green? So if I'm on South Pine Creek, I won't be able to walk around anymore down to South to Sasco?
So we can, Attorney Green, forgive me. So we'll have opportunity for the applicant to answer the questions on rebuttal, but I'll just clarify that directly. No, what was made clear is that at low tide, the members of the public can walk fully around the point. What was also made clear is that this is not going to enable public access on the private property, right? So at high tide, you're not going to be able to do that. And you can't
But you can't do that now anyway, right? When it's high tide, you
You
can't
can't
walk
do it
around the
now.
beach.
That's exactly right. So the public access is not, the point is, it's not going to change. Under this proposal, the area in which the public is allowed or capable of traversing is not going to change.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this? Okay. Ms. Harrigan, we have nobody else signed up, yes?
I do not.
Okay. So going once, going twice, and sold. We will move on now to the applicant's rebuttal. Attorney Rizzio,
Ray, you just
you're
need
on
to
mute.
unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Okay, am I back?
You are.
Chairman, it's actually a pleasure to not have to really rebut much, but I just want to say and reinforce that we believe we satisfy the objectives of your regulation with regard to this open space plan. I think it will show that when we get to the subdivision, actual subdivision approval, that it will only be that this subdivision, this open space plan will be enhanced and further supported. And respectfully request a favorable recommendation to accept this open space plan so that we can move forward with this subdivision and continue to protect this very valuable natural resource. And I thank you for your time and your understanding and patience in working this application through for us.
Very good. Thank you very much. And with that, I will close the public hearing on this item. And we have two more items on our public hearing. They are related. I'll call them together. Item C2, zoning regulation amendment, application of 15 Uncle Road LLC to amend sections 12 and 28 of the zoning regulations. And item C2, 15 Uncle Road, special permit application of 15 Uncle Road LLC pertaining to the construction of a mixed-use commercial and residential building in the center design business district. So we continued this from our hearing on March 23rd, 2021. Attorney Rizzio, you were in the middle of, I think, nearing the end of your presentation.
Chairman, I'd like to make this first of all, I'd like to make a request to the commission that I would respectfully request with regard to the special permit application, which is number 2 on your public hearing agenda tonight, that we are listed as number 2 for 15 Uncle Road LLC. I'd like to withdraw that portion of the that separate application, withdraw it without prejudice. The reason being is, as we were going through the text changes and then interrelating back and forth with regard to the actual plan to be presented, it became apparent to me that there were concerns of the commissions that would need to be addressed. It would seem to me that if the commission did not accept all of the text amendments, that we would have to start all over anyway. And rather than spend 2 hours of the commission's time tonight going through a particular plan, that if I could just spend a much shorter period of time reiterating our request for the text changes, treat that separately. Then if the commission comes back with either concerns or doesn't approve some of the text or approves most of them, that we would then be able to come back with a plan that what would be in accordance with the regulations as they exist, rather than as they may exist. So I'd hate to spend hours of the commission's time on something that I may not even be able to present to you. So
Yeah, no, I think
respectfully
that-
request, yeah.
Sorry, yep, you said it. I think that makes good sense. Let's focus on the application for the regulation amendment, and to the extent that we amend the regulations to allow something different, your client can prepare a revised special permit application that, you know, proposes something consistent with the regulations. So, you know, with that, oh, you're right, it is C2, it's a typo, C2 and C2. So the special permit application is you know, deemed withdrawn without prejudice. And so let's spend, you know, the time that you need to finish up your presentation on the zoning regulation amendment. We'll go to public hearing on that. And you know, it's 8:30 now. If we can finish that up tonight, you know, that would be great.
My portion will really just be, because I thought we got sidetracked a little bit. It was so hard to keep the text amendment and an application apart. I know Commissioner Bramman had some very important discussions. There was some discussion about parking and how that related. And, you know, we couldn't really, I can't change the plans to adapt to something that I don't even know is going to succeed. So if I'd like to just take us through, I probably don't need more than 15 or 20 minutes to get through these changes, explain to you again why we need them, and then we'll rest. And if the public has concerns about these changes, which we believe are consistent with what the commission has developed in their downtown station land use and development policy recommendations, then we can talk about those. But I'd rather not deal with a specific plan at this point.
Yep. All right. Very well. Proceed.
Okay, Chris, why don't we just go back to, let's put up our proposed regulation and then switch back and forth really quickly, explaining our reasoning why we want these changes in this TOD, which is in the downtown centered business district. So as you know, the first thing we'd like to do is change that currently residential uses may not be on a ground floor and cannot exceed 50% of the total floor area of the building, and no building shall contain more than 2 stories devoted to residential use. Each dwelling unit must have a minimum floor area. Currently it's 750 square feet. Your recommendation was to move it down to 450 square feet. We're okay with 750 square feet. We just tried to make it consistent with what your policy recommendations are. So Chris, why don't you go to the downtown policy? We can show specifically where that is located. So if you can see that here we go. Currently, the residential use CB and CDBD provide that they are not located on the ground floor, do not exceed 50% of the floor area. The town should continue to require non-residential uses on the ground floor area, which is, we're not trying to change that. The other 2 restrictions on upper floor residential area inhibit the development of mixed-use buildings with retail dining or permitted uses on the ground floor and 3 floors of residential uses. Your own recommendation was removing this restriction will enable more infill development in the downtown area. That is the reason we were requesting this change, and we would hope the commission would also support this change. Chris, let's go to our next change, which we're requesting, which is important, which is regard to height. What's interesting is currently you are allowed 5 stories of livable area or 55 feet or 50 feet, provided any ground floor, or 50 feet. So what we wanted to do was change it to 4 stories. So we're actually lowering the height of livable floor area or 55 feet, provided any ground floor story has a minimum height of 15 feet. The idea was, in your recommendations, Chris, let's go to the recommendations. The commission wanted to see, or you folks in your study wanted to see a real first floor that had 15 feet of ground floor area to ensure that the buildings are designed to best serve retail and dining uses envisioned. It gave the commission a nice presence along the street line. You're not looking inside to people's apartments. You have a nice height so that you can have those nice high areas in retail, which retail wants, and also with regard to restaurants. The problem is when you go 15 feet in height, then you can't, it's hard to make the rest of it work if you're going to have 9 to 10 foot ceilings in residential. So our idea was to be able to keep the ground floor at minimum height, keep the total stories at 4, and then you end up at the 55 feet. So you'd have 10 feet per floor. You would allow, which would permit 9-foot high ceilings. You need a foot between each floor. So therefore, consistent with your recommendations, if you went to 55 feet, you would be able to keep the 15 foot on the ground floor, consistent with your regulations, then 4 stories of 10 feet. And that's basically consistent with your regulations, and that's what we would like to do with regard to height. So we're actually reducing the number of stories because it's going to be a 15-foot first floor and then 3 more livable stories above it. Next, Chris, let's talk about coverage. Consistent with your regulation, your study concluded that recommends increasing the floor area ratio limit to 3 to enable development buildings in a 3- and 4-story range. This scale is fully consistent with existing building scale and the goals of a walkable, vital downtown. That's found right in section, I believe it's 12.75, but Chris, can you go to that section of the study? And we'll handle 2 things right here. As you can see, the study recommends a floor area ratio limit to 3 to enable development of 3 to 4-story buildings. The idea behind that is that currently there's a maximum lot coverage of 90%. So this requirement functionally means that a building development at the maximum lot coverage can only be 2 stories, rather than what permits, which is 5 permitted or 4 stories recommended. So it'd be almost impossible to have a 90% floor area ratio, and then only would basically get you 2 more stories. So to be consistent with your, we would ask that you revise your floor area ratio to go from 2 to 3 times, which would allow for buildings in the 3 to 4-story range to be built. Otherwise, if you keep it the way it is, you're not consistent with your plan, and you're going to end up with buildings that are only 2 stories, which is not what you've been seeking in the downtown center business district. All right, Chris, let's go to our next change, which is street line setback. We ask that properties fronting along Uncle Road or Sanford Street be able to have extend to the street line. This, you could even add the post road if you'd like, because all the properties currently along Umpqua and most of the properties along Sanford are all right up to the street line. Community theater, the buildings that go as you go up Umpqua Road toward the train station, all the buildings along the post road, and then back along Sanford Street where's the restaurants and Archie Moore's and the other retail. So what we'd like to do is just make that consistent and allow the frontage, the property go right up to the property line on Umpqua or Sanford Street. We think that would satisfy what you're looking for, is a consistent downtown, frontage and landscape elevations, which would be, everything would be nice, walkable, and be consistent along Umpqua Road. Otherwise, any other building that gets built, if it's going to be preserved, is going to have to, if it gets torn down, it's going to have to move 10 feet off the property line, which is not consistent with the way the post road's been developed, or Umpqua Road, or Sanford Street. Chris, let's go to our next change. This allows properties along Umpqua Road to be the front setback reduced to 0 on both sides. Basically, the buildings up and down Umpqua Road touch each other. A lot of and same with the post road. This allows for the buildings to be built along the side of each other, and it would be consistent with basically the type of units that you're looking at, the type of development that you're looking to preserve along a downtown. Last, Chris, I think we got to go to our parking. So in parking, we're asking that you reduce in the transit-oriented overlay design, the residential parking area should be reduced to lesser one parking space per bedroom or one, right, currently it says 1.5. Your study recommends that it go down to 1.25. Many of the apartments that I think that this commission has approved in the downtown area have been around 1.25 per unit. That would be consistent with your master plan and consistent with some other projects that have already been approved. So Chris, let's go to the master plan with regard to parking utilization and performance. Basically talking about, here we go. In a TOD over a park overlay or in the transit-oriented district, which the CDBD is the one space per bedroom or 1.25 per unit, which is level less for residential uses in downtown. The downtown station area has the strongest walkable character of any area of Fairfield with shopping, dining. It is also the same level of train service as Fairfield Metro, and on-street parking is regulated. So in this instance, one space per bedroom, which protects the commission rather than the 1.25 per unit, so that people don't end up overburdening or over intensification of the uses. So all of these changes, we believe, are consistent with what the town's looking for. If you were to adopt these changes, I envision our client coming back with a plan that meets and is in accordance with these requested text changes. I'm basically, and then the last change was that we requested, and I don't know what the commission would like to do with this, but we think that there's currently we tried to remove would like to see removed that any building over 30 feet shall have a setback of 1 foot in addition to the applicable minimum setback requirement for each of the 3 foot or fraction thereof on any building thereof which exceeds 30 feet in height. So it basically allows for a tiering or that wedding cake look, which I don't think looks great. I think the consistency of the uses along the buildings along the street makes much more sense. We'll leave that for the commission to decide. If they do not want to adopt that additional setback, we'll certainly make a decision on the application. You also have the ability, if you pass these regulations under your setback, under your special permit, you have enough guidance and enough discretion with which to demand additional setbacks where the commission deems it's necessary. So we just believe that the consistency of the building, you're going to have a 0 setback. It's good to have all these buildings, everything along Fairfield, along the post road is consistent in its height, basically being straight up from the street. If the commission requires an additional setback, we'll modify our plan to be such. I think if you remove this, you could certainly make it in the commission's discretion, but you have total control over this. This is all of these text changes are in your discretion. What we tried to do was mimic your downtown station land use and development policy recommendations and implement those as this commission has found and adopted. I don't know what much more, because this is what we're trying to basically, as I said, implement what this commission has already studied and decided. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I think that really would wrap up my presentation. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay, very good. So let's let me take that video down. Unless I can see. And I'll throw this open to the commissioners. Does anyone have questions for Attorney Rizzio on the proposed regulation amendments? Okay. I mean, we talked through quite a bit in the last session, so I mean, you basically just summarized what we had gone through, so not terribly surprised, but okay, so everybody's good? Commissioner Francis?
Does this text amendment deal at all with all the truck deliveries? There's
The text amendment will not, that will be dealt with in any special permit application as to a particular building and particular use. What we're trying to do is take your recommendations from your policy recommendations and implement them from policy and study into your zoning regulations so that we can come back before you with a proposed building of which you guys will discuss circulation, you'll discuss traffic, you'll discuss the amount of parking, you'll discuss landscape, and all that would be subject to a special permit application where this commission has a great deal of discretion. We're just trying to put ourselves in a position to be able to make an application consistent with what the policy that you've adopted with regard to the downtown area. So that would be addressed in a special permit, Commissioner Francis.
There is that land on Sanford Street is heavily used. And now we have a new restaurant on Umpqua we're going to have. There's simply no place for deliveries. All right.
So they would have, in an application, we would have to satisfy this commissioner, satisfy you, Commissioner Francis, that we can adequately deliver product, pick up waste, safely have people traverse in and out of our parking areas. And that would all be subject to a specific application for a specific building. That is not currently in your regulations, but for the fact that you need you suggested to have traffic studies and there's parking requirements and things like that, which all have to be met before we come back before you and all addressed during a code compliance application with regard to a special permit application. Tonight, we don't have that application. We're just talking, putting regulations together, and that's it. There's no particular building that we're looking at tonight. There's no particular particular site plan we're looking at tonight. We're just talking about implementing your policy recommendations into your zoning regulations.
Right, and we should also be aware that, you know, those regulations don't only apply to this particular, you know, parcel or the 15 Umpqua Place, right? I mean, these would have effect in a wider area of, you know, a TOD, both in the downtown area as well as over by Metro Center. So, you know, we need to consider that, I think, as well. Anyone else?
This is not currently a TOD, correct?
You would have to make it I believe you have to make an application for the overlay. It's certainly in a transit-oriented district.
Okay. All right. So, Commissioner Braun?
So you're saying the Center Business District is a TOD right now?
No, currently the TODs, I think this is for a change to the Center Business District.
Okay.
The downtown station, there's a downtown station land use development policy and recommendations that talks particularly about the Center Design Business District. And that's what we're talking about. It happens to be in a transit-oriented area, and that's what's discussed in your policy. But the changes we're looking to make are to the Center Design Business District,
Which runs from Mill River all the way to South Benson Road, somewhere along like that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went, the present boundary is from the intersection of Post and Beach west to Bungalow Avenue, which is one street west of Mill Plain Road.
And you would like this to all be transit-oriented district?
Well, it's not. It's not a transit-oriented district. It's in the Center Design Business District, and the regulations would apply throughout that district. the area in question just happens to be in a TOD area around the train station.
Correct.
And the TOD area around the train station is just the train station.
Well, currently the TOD is around the metro station, and then there's a downtown transit-oriented district, which is further up on Uncle Road for a particular piece of property. But currently, and Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Chairman, that currently the downtown is governed by the Center Design Business District, which, like we talked about, runs from Bungalow to Beach along the Post Road.
Right.
It happens to be in a transit-oriented area, but there is no current regulation that makes this area a transit-oriented district.
Okay. All right, then with that, I will throw this over to public comment. Ms. Harrigan, do we have anybody signed up in the chat box for public comment on this item?
Yes, we do. We have William Burke first and Matthew Hollick second, and then we have a few others.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll, Mr. Burke.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Well, thank you for serving on the commission. I'd just like to say, I think you should keep in mind the giant 4-story box application that was originally, married to this application, because if you accept these changes to your regs, that's what you're going to see. It's just going to be giant 4-story box next to giant 4-story box next to giant 4-story box. And the applicant comes to you and says, well, we want to eliminate the setbacks so that the properties can match along Umpqua Road. There are actually some gaps between the buildings on Umpqua Road currently, but if you look at all the buildings on our block, none of them are more than 2 stories, not one. As far as the gaps, there are good reasons to have gaps between buildings. They allow people to walk in, they allow fire access, they allow light and air to get in. So I would encourage you to reject all the setback changes. I don't think any of them are appropriate. With respect to the increase in the floor area from 200 to 300%, we're also opposed to that. And I should mention, my office is right here. I am right here at the corner of Post and Umpqua a lot. Many nights I work late here. And I've seen the traffic. I've seen the traffic that Commissioner Francis has referred to. In the mornings, you can't get up and down Sanford Street because it's a loading zone for the restaurant. When we're not in pandemic, the traffic here is terrible. And with respect to the, I think this is maxing out in every level, and it's just too much. I think there has to be some give somewhere. If you're going up over 30 feet, having some sort of setback makes entirely, good sense. But again, for light, air, for fire access, for all these things. So I would encourage you to reject the changes in terms of the increase in floor area and the setback changes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. Harrigan, who's next?
Next up is Matthew Halleck, followed by Mary Kate Burke.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Burke 100%. This is bad for Fairfield. It's like the Great Wall of Scott. I mean, it's going to block out all the light. Who needs we don't have to be matching things. That's like not a good standard to be like, oh, this looks like this, looks like this. We don't need that kind of symmetry. It should be 2-story buildings. I know the regulations can be changed, and I know, the regulations are what they are with 4 stories or 30 feet and all these changes in regulations you're you're looking to push through, but it's just bad for Fairfield, and you're ruining Fairfield. You really are, by shoving in these buildings. This is not what Fairfield's all about, and you're killing the brand. So I just 100% reject all of this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else signed up?
Yep, next we have Mary Kate Burke, followed
Hi.
by Catherine O'Donnell.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us the forum to kind of chat about this. I have read the transit-oriented development study that has been referenced. And I just want to say that, it talks a lot about walkability. And the more that you encroach on the space by removing the easement setback requirements, the more you are going to make downtown Fairfield, in fact, less walkable. I also want to say that while those highlighted areas do kind of speak to what was specifically stated in this now detached 4-story plan, they also talk about a lot of infrastructure that probably should come first. They talk about more biking, they talk about more car shares. So it's a bigger vision for the future. And without that kind of infrastructure in place, any easements and setbacks that you're going to remove, as you indicated earlier, will remove as an aggregate from all future builds, you are really kind of creating a precedent that I think will take the thing that makes downtown Fairfield valuable and charming and turn it into something that the infrastructure is not prepared for, in addition to all of the stormwater issues that you guys have on Sanford Street. But also, and the parking. I mean, it's just asking for every single change to facilitate this now detached plan. And it's going to create a lot of precedents that are going to be very hard for the infrastructure to support. Once there's tons of bikes, once there's tons of car shares, maybe that could be something to investigate. But the things that he keeps referencing is a long-term plan, and he's wanting to advocate for all the changes to happen right now. So I agree that this would be a very bad precedent setting for your most densely populated area in downtown Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Catherine O'Donnell, followed by Attorney Joel Green.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I just have a question, and I more than a comment about the change from the 750 square foot to 450 square feet apartment based on what the TPZ regulation would be. It seems to me that that's an opportunity to add more density to the residential area than the 750 would. I can't imagine that being an adequate amount of space for any senior couple or senior, a senior citizen or a single person to want to function. I'm just curious as to why that recommendation has been made, and I would look very carefully at that, or the increase that it may permit within that residential portions of the building. And one other question I had or comment was on the tiered effect and the setback, the having no setback to the sidewalks. I think Attorney Rizzio spoke about the tiered effect, and I would think, given the height of this building on a hill, and I was the other day driving down Umpqua Road, parked on top where the railroad station bridge is, and thinking of a structure 50 feet high on a hill is going to have a much higher look than 50 feet on a flat level surface with the roadway going the way it is. And so I was thinking, was ever any consideration or could consideration be given to the retail on the ground, the offices on the second floor being 25 feet high, and then the residential third and fourth levels be tiered back with a setback of a 10-foot or whatever it would be, that would make it not appear to be a dense, tall, high building in the middle of a very quaint town setting. And those are my two major comments. I did write into the commission with some other comments as well. I hope you'll take those into consideration.
We will, certainly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Attorney Green, do you mind if another member of the public goes before you? We have a Linda Batchelder who'd like to speak as well.
That's fine. Sure, of course.
Linda, if
Mitch.
you want to go ahead and speak, Linda Batchelder.
I do see her, unless she just unmuted. Are you there? We can't hear you if you're trying to speak. I see her now. You're Ms. Batchelder. We can't hear you. With apologies. Oh, you're all set? You don't know what to do. I'm sorry. Yes, you are unmuted and we can't hear you. Would you like to dial back in with a phone? Oh, well.
We can send her the phone number and the access code in the chat.
Okay, that would be great. And she can certainly submit written if she'd like. Attorney Green?
Thank you. Once again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission staff. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening on behalf of 50 Sanford LLC and its principal, Harold Fischel. 50 Sanford is the owner of the property that abuts 15 Umpqua. It is a property that is bound by Donnelly Way, Umpqua Road, the Fairfield Theater Company property, and Sanford Street. Those are the boundaries of the property owned by 50 Sanford LLC. We appear before you this evening in opposition to the proposed text amendment. Attorney Rizzio was good enough to alert me this afternoon of his intention regarding the application, but I'm going to have to pick through my outline a bit here with this change, but I think it was sensible to address the text amendment first. Now, as this commission is aware, and I've addressed the commission on this, you're acting this evening in a legislative capacity. The commission has wide discretion in determining whether to enact these proposed text amendments or not. And in exercising that discretion, though, the commission exercises a much larger planning function here. And I know that earlier you referenced this zone that we're talking about that basically runs from Bungalow Avenue to Beach along Post Road in south of the railroad tracks. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if someone's unmuted, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I can check the list. I think it looks like we do have one person who is unmuted. Pretty much everybody else is. Maybe Ms. Harrigan, if you can just go through the list and control that. Go ahead, Attorney Green.
Yeah, so anyways, so the commission's got a wide amount of discretion here in deciding whether to enact these text changes. And I really think that the application should be denied. And while the applicant has cherry-picked certain aspects of the TOD to support the proposed development or the proposed text amendments at this point, the applicant has really failed to address sort of the local and broader planning issues presented here. And it's an interesting time downtown. We are hopefully emerging from COVID, and yet I've had occasion to be downtown recently, and in fact on Sanford Street and Umpqua Street. And curiously, while we haven't fully emerged from COVID yet, parking is a problem in that area at certain times of the day. And I'm sure the commission recognizes that. It is hard to find a space on Sanford Street. It is hard to find spaces at times on Umpqua Road. The spaces in front of Bank of America are full. The Post Road is full, and you have to travel to find parking spaces, even now in sort of this COVID environment we're in. Now, I know and I expect that we're going to emerge from COVID, and I'm hopeful of it, as we all are. And hopefully downtown and all the suffering businesses and suffering restaurants see, a resurgence. And I think, once this thing is cleared and once we do sort of get critical mass on vaccinations and the like, I think there will be great and unprecedented enthusiasm for coming downtown and patronizing our great restaurants and our businesses downtown. Now, recently, last year, you approved 27 units at 78 Umpqua Road. And during that application, many of you expressed concerns about parking. 90 units are nearing completion up the street at 333 Umpqua Road. And you can see that development is taking shape. And I understand that development is leasing at the present time. The Sacred Heart University Theater, the community theater, the iconic community theater, is going to reopen one of these days. And hopefully, I look forward to seeing you all there, and I think it will be received with great enthusiasm by the community. Schools are returning to full enrollment, hopefully, they have, but so there's a considerable amount going on, especially at this intersection, especially on Umpqua Road, especially on Sanford Street. So I want to just share the idea with this commission of doing this. Let's tap the brakes. Let's tap the brakes on making changes to zoning regulations at this moment till we can really understand what the impacts are of all of these things happening in this, particularly on this block. I really think that in the fair exercise of the jurisdiction of this commission, let's take a minute and see how this all unravels and unrolls over the next 6 months, over the next year. That TOD, which we've all read, was published in August of 2019. It did not begin, and none of us, no one other than perhaps Bill Gates, contemplated the place that we find ourselves in now in terms of what's happened in our community and our country and indeed in the whole world. And I think it's an important time in the planning function to take a look, to take a breath before we start making changes. I would also submit that that promoting more activity, certainly restaurants need parking, our downtown needs parking, and to start enacting zoning regulations that would create robust development at this point, particularly what is to be contemplated on these roads, and to start tearing up that property right now would do, I think, tremendous harm to a lot of the restaurants in the area and a lot of businesses in the area that really are looking for some stability. So I offer you that idea as a broad overarching idea. Let's tap the brakes. Now, in terms of the actual text amendments, they are inconsistent with the TOD. The TOD really contemplated sort of drop-in infill development, but it was primarily about maintaining the character, and there's a large part of the TOD was maintaining the beloved downtown. Those words are actually used in the TOD to maintain the character and sort of the mature and well-loved downtown, and it was specifically addressed. Mechanically, the text amendments are problematical, and I will highlight a few of sort of the problems with the way they're drafted. In terms of 12.7.4, dealing with height, the applicant would have it reworded to be 4 stories of livable floor area or 55 feet, provided any ground floor story has a minimum height of 15 feet. I think it's admirable that we are establishing this notion of having ample and optimal retail space. If more retail space is to be created with 15-foot ceilings, that's fine. But the way this is actually worded, it says 4 stories of livable floor area or 55 feet. Now, you've already heard from several speakers that 55 feet is massive in terms of any other building downtown. Well, obviously there's a few exceptions. On Sherman Street, there's a building that's obviously taller, but 55 feet is certainly out of character with that which exists in the zone. But the way this is worded, it suggests 4 stories of livable floor area or 55 feet. So theoretically, if you had 4 stories with 14-foot ceilings, for example, you would have 56 feet of height. And so that it needs to be tweaked a bit because it would technically allow a 4-story livable building to have a height that exceeds 55 feet. So there's one issue. The total floor area under coverage and bulk, once again, you're promoting massive and bulky buildings. I'm not sure, and just to backtrack a bit, I don't know that the applicant really addressed this commission in terms of what the broader implications are in terms of the whole district that Jim Wendt described, the center district. So the applicant really didn't provide this commission with what the potential implications are for all properties in the zone. In terms of setbacks, and let's look at both the street line setback and the side property line setback. So the first problem we run into is the same issue that this commission has encountered in the past regarding affordable developments. And I've addressed the commission. I know you've spent a lot of time on looking at regulations which really only have a limited application. In this case, the applicant has, in my view, done the ill-advised thing of referencing specifically only Umpqua Road in these 2 regulations, referring to 12.7.6.1 in terms of the street line setback and in terms of the side property line setback. In each instance, they reference Umpqua Road. So first of all, I think that is too limited because it's in the zone, but it only addresses Umpqua Road. This runs afoul of Connecticut law regarding uniformity. And Connecticut law provides, and you're all familiar with Section 8-2, which is the authority under the Connecticut General Statutes, which grants this commission the authority within the guidelines statute to enact zoning regulations. But there is a statutory imperative. There is a requirement in Section 8-2, and it is uniformity. And what 8-2 requires is intra-district uniformity, meaning that all properties in a zone have to be treated equally and fairly. And what the applicant did in this, for example, street line setback, it refers to a building, any street which is 100 feet or more in width, or a property with frontage on Umpqua Road or Sanford Street and in the design commercial district. So essentially, properties in that district are being treated differently. Properties that are not on Sanford Street or Umpqua Road but are in the same zone are being treated differently. There's case law, and the McKenzie case most notably cited the Pleasant Valley Neighborhood Association versus Planning and Zoning Commission, 15 Con. 110. And McKenzie, the site on that was 146 Con. 406. But at page 426, in that case, the appellate court said, as the Supreme Court has explained, the obvious purpose of the requirement of uniformity in the regulations is to assure property owners that there shall be no improper discrimination, all owners of the same class and in the same district being treated alike with provisions for relief in cases of exceptional difficulty or unusual hardship by action of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that refers obviously to variances, but there's also the notion of uniformity in terms of how zoning regulations are crafted. So the law provides that everyone has to be treated the same. Obviously, 12.7.6.1 and I guess it's dealing with side property lines and dealing with street setbacks favors properties on Umpqua Road impermissibly. So I would submit that. The additional setback issue, and I know this was the subject of some questions by the commission and some comments by the public. Once again, the true implications, and I note that Liam Burke referenced this as well, the true implications of this in terms of the whole district have not been adequately explained by the applicant. What does this mean to other properties? Is this a desirable feature? I would suggest that in terms of having open space, a feel of open space, a sense of air, a sense of light, you don't want these setbacks to be completely eliminated. On the parking relief, or the change of the parking that's proposed from 1.5 to 1.25 parking spaces per household, this goes back to my tap the brakes suggestion. Parking is a problem, and I think you've heard a few members of the public reference it. I know that everyone goes through the center of downtown, and just parking is a real problem. I understand that the TOD notion was to sort of create walkability and to create development that promotes walkability. And I would have addressed the fact, I would have sort of addressed the features of the special permit application in the proposed building to address the problems with this. But suffice to say, and I think as one of the speakers said earlier, this, I mean, you're aware, you all obviously saw the application that was proposed regarding the special permit. And with that application, you saw what was possible and what the problems were with adjusting the regulations in this way. And you saw what was possible in terms of this huge, bulky building that's so out of character, and that regulation amendments such as would promote. You'll bear with for one moment. I had my notes were sort of intertwined with the special application, so I just want to pull out a few the TOD had a goal in it to clearly express, in amending the regulations, to clearly express Fairfield standards for development and design, and the TOD endorsement of strong, uniform design standards for the CDBD district. That is inconsistent with the notion of using Uncle Road only or Sanford Street only in a regulation. So that runs afoul of that notion in the TOD. You know, I don't know whether this was addressed. I think there's an error in, I'm not sure that the language, I was unclear on the language in 12.7.6.1 regarding street line setback, where it said, and I don't know if this was addressed by the commission, but where it said, just before the highlighted change, it says, except that a building or structure may extend to the street line or any street which is 100 feet or more in width, and it says, or a property. Oh, I've lost my page here. It says, or a property with frontage on Uncle Road or Sanford Street. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, may extend to the street line or any street which is 100 feet or more in width, or a property. I'll drop that because I don't have the full text in front of me. But in any event, I would urge the commission, once again, from an overall planning standpoint, in terms of where we as a town find ourselves at this moment, but also in terms of the concerns, in terms of the actual proposed regulations, to at this time deny the proposed text amendments. Let's take a longer, more thoughtful look and see where we are down the track as sort of a responsible exercise of the jurisdiction of this commission in terms of planning. I certainly want to thank you for your generous patience and hearing me this evening. And I know you've had a lot on your plate lately, and I appreciate the work that you do. I don't know if you have any questions for me at this point.
Thanks very much, Attorney Green. So I see Commissioner Noonan.
Attorney Green, thank you. One of the things that Attorney Rizzio had mentioned fairly consistently was that his regulations aim to essentially legislate the recommendations in the report that we had however long ago he referenced. Any thoughts with respect to that argument?
First of all, I don't think that I think the TOD plan was not, first of all, it was published and the final report was published in July of 2019. So it could never have contemplated where we find ourselves in April of 2021. That's the first aspect. I think that where the applicant falls on that is that the TOD contemplated a broader, I think a broader analysis in terms of what the impacts were. These are certainly recommendations. These are certainly thoughts. But for example, changing the parking ratio, I think that you can easily say that right now, changing the parking ratio in terms of the potential impacts from this plan, a mistake at this moment to sort of drop it from 1.5 to 1.2 spaces. It's funny because I had a lot about the development that had been proposed, the actual building in terms of its parking and the way that that was structured. But I don't want to bore you with a lot of notes, but I had quite a few responses on the TOD. And I would just suggest that the larger intent of the TOD was, while promoting a pedestrian and walkable downtown, the larger notion was to, while doing that, preserve the character and sort of the layout, character, height, bulk of our downtown. And I would just suggest that sort of picking out some of the changes that the applicant has proposed. And while I understand that the applicant wanted to have that development at 15 Umpqua, to just sort of pick at that plan and pick aspects like eliminating setbacks and that sort of thing, run afoul of a broader reading of the TOD.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other members of the commission have any questions for Attorney Green? Commissioner Braun, you're on the phone. We can go next.
My phone's about to die, so I'll try real quick. This, just to point out, the Center Business District goes beyond Thorpe Street, and that is a large development also coming into play, entering onto that complicated intersection. I was just going to point that out.
Yeah, I looked at that today. Actually, just visually, Bungalow, Hemlock Hardware is not in the district, but that property with Boca Rosa and the Taylor is in the district on that side of the street. And Tequila Revolution's on the wrong side of this, is not in the zone, but across the street is.
Thank you. Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, Attorney Green, in terms of walkability and so forth in the downtown area, I think most city planners at this point are recommending that one of the ways to achieve that effect is to actually move buildings closer to the street line so you don't have parking in front. For instance, if you look at the development on the corner of Sasko Hill and the Post Road opposite Martell, where you have the parking in front, as opposed to moving the building closer to the street line. Forgetting about building height or bulk at the moment, would you agree that eliminating the setbacks and moving buildings closer to the street does improve the walkability, people's access to retail and so forth?
I think that I think the answer to that is that may promote walkability, but I'm not sure that allowing a building that's, for example, 55 feet high to be right up against that setback is consistent with that notion, because, I mean, you know, it's interesting. I went to Chicago. I was in Chicago recently, or not, before the pandemic. And the streets there are so wide that they allow a lot of light, and they're broad, and you have this sense of openness. I know Attorney Rizzio perked up when I mentioned Chicago because he was just there the other day. But so many of our streets, particularly the side streets, are so narrow that to allow 4-story or 5-story buildings, while you may be promoting walkability, you also are kind of creating a tunnel on those streets that are in the district. So I think perhaps stepping buildings back, maybe adjusting the setback so that you're not necessarily having parking in front of the building, but you're allowing sort of a generous area to support notions like outdoor dining and you know, wider sidewalks and wider areas, I think are consistent with those goals. So I think it's something for certainly for the commission to consider, but it's not this.
Thank you.
Any other members of the commission have any questions? Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this?
Mr. Chairman, could I just finish one comment?
Sure.
My comment that I began with, and the comment that I want to leave with, is we are just tapping the brakes right now. And to Commissioner Levy's point and Commissioner Noonan's point, I'm not suggesting abandoning the TOD plan at all. I'm just suggesting that right now we just do a check and sort of see where we are and take a breath. And
I think we got it.
I appreciate it.
Yep, I think we got that point. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this? We don't have any more signed up in the chat.
No, Mr. Chair, I don't see anybody.
Okay. And I'll just ask one last time. I can't see a lot of video, so hopefully.
Oh, Chairman, can I say a word?
Yes, please speak up. Who is this? Just a name and an address.
Yeah, hi, yeah, Dr. Lee Forrest. I'm the principal of the property. And
of which property?
50.
Well, it's no longer the property in question, but okay. I guess you're the principal of the applicant. So why don't we do this? If that's the case, then you should really you should present your testimony and rebuttal, and Attorney Rizzio can call you and direct you on that. That's typically the way that we would handle that.
All right, great. Thank you.
Anybody else? So that's it. So very good. We'll turn it back over to you, Attorney Rizzio, and Dr. Lee has a few words to say.
So, Chairman, I'm going to let Dr. Lee speak first. It's not wasn't part of our presentation, so I may be as interested to hear what Dr. Lee as you do. But, and it's Dr. Lee Forrest. So I'll introduce Dr. Lee Forrest, who is an owner in the Center Design Business District, and I'm anxiously awaiting his comments.
Thank you, Attorney Rizzio. I appreciate that. I just have just a couple of small comments to make, and in reference to Attorney Green, if he could, provide some insight to those, that'd be wonderful. And what I'd like to ask is his client, Hal Fischel, who's owned the property for 50 years, Can you tell me how many parking spaces your client provides for the town?
So this is not a question and answer period, unfortunately. And we're done with public comment, and he
Okay,
weighed in.
I'd like to just I'd like to just add in, his client provides 0 parking spaces and has since he's owned the property for 50 years. And his establishments have been utilizing my property for parking for the past 50 years. And so, you know, that's probably an area of contention. Mr. Fischel's tried to buy me out of my property. And when he wasn't able to buy my partners out, he approached me to buy me out. When I said no, he wanted to partner up with me. And, you know, so, you know, he's interested in his own particular agenda. But, you know, that being said,
Okay.
I just hope that the commission will realize that there's big sharks and little fish, and I'm a guppy in the picture here. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
All right, as attorney for the guppy, I would like to just make this very quick. Chairman, members of the commission, I think what you have to realize, the changes we're asking for are not this huge change to the center design business district. Basically, for height, we're actually knocking it down a floor. You can go 5 stories now. We're talking about 4. We're still staying within a couple feet of what the max could be. And the problem is, if to invoke, and we don't have a problem with 50 feet, which is currently there, but if you want a 14-foot first floor, you can't stay within 50 feet. Identically, the same thing with regard to, we're not asking to increase the coverage, but we're asking to just increase the floor area so that we can build within this development policy recommendations. The street line setbacks we're asking for are consistent with the historical existing line conditions that have gone over all these years. And the parking is already 1 space per bedroom. We're just reducing it from 1.25, from 1.5 to 1.25 on larger units. That's it. I mean, we're not really stretching what's currently existing. I think we're trying to do is modify and implement these downtown development policies. I really want to thank Mr. Green for making the commission note that this was adopted in October 2019 and not October 2020. In October 2020, if anything that was adopted in October 2020 would give you cause to hesitate because the world stopped, nobody was at the train station. You could lay down in the train station, set up a tent and be there forever and not even worry about it. But this was 2019 when Fairfield was humming, downtown was humming. The restaurants are all looking for help. They still want a lot of people downtown. They want a thriving downtown. They want a thriving retail. They want people to live downtown. Downtown's become very attractive. I can tell from the projects that I've been involved with in downtown. People want to move. They want to live downtown. The real estate has spiked downtown. And there's a reason for that, because people want to be able to walk to places. People want to be able to travel. All of you are be able to walk to a train. New York's going to come back, and people are going to walk. People are going to walk to the train station, take the train to Stanford, take the train to New York. That's coming back. We all know that, because 95 is becoming a parking lot again. So look at what we're proposing. Look at the significance of the changes versus what exists historically and in context correctly right now. And you will see these are not big asks, but it is certainly consistent with your development policy and recommendations. The fact that it is October 2019 tells me this was a policy that envisioned Fairfield and discussed Fairfield when it was going at full steam, not when everybody was in lockdown and nobody was going out, nobody could go to the restaurants. 2019 Fairfield, 2018 Fairfield's been flying. Fairfield's been used. You guys knew what the streets were like. You knew what the parking was like. So there's no reason to hesitate because it was October 2019. We're hoping to get back to October 2019. It's October 2020 where you would have said, wait a second, if you adopted this in October 2020, totally different set of circumstances. We tried to address some specific roads and add some specific roads, which this commission has done in the past. And the reason to do that was kind of just to dip your toe in and match up with what has gone on historically and what is currently existing throughout those areas. Take a step back from the hysteria. Look at the changes that are being proposed. These are changes that you guys thought about, you guys discussed, you guys wanted to adopt, and all we're trying to do is implement those. Something will go there. We're trying to do something consistent with what your policies have recommended, with the policy that you folks have recommended. I thank you for your time. I hope we kind of channel the discussion tonight, and I'm trying to keep it to a conceptual discussion about where you want to see downtown go and how to implement the policies you folks spent a lot of your time and your staff spent a lot of time on proposing and adopting. I thank you for your time. I respect for the request you consider and take the time to really analyze these changes and how these changes are really much different than what your policy recommendations are or what currently exists downtown. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. And we hope to be back before you with regard to a project that conforms with what we hope you'll adopt. And thanks again.
Okay, very good. And with that, I'll close the public hearing on this item and I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.